everybody, it is Romania Black, and we are on episode 11 of season 2 of the Apothecary Diaries, and the last couple weeks have been very interesting. We've had several weeks talking about Jinshi's Papa Bro, about Jinshi's Grandmama, about Jinshi's Grandpapa, and all of Jinshi's family has been called into question the last couple weeks. And then last week, we had a very interesting episode that at first glance seems like kind of a one-off episode. You're like, oh, this is just like no. All the theories, all the tinfoil hat theories. And let me tell you, Discord has been eerily quiet. Discord's been very quiet, like no comments. And I'm like, that's usually a sign of either nobody cares or nobody wants to say anything because things might be about to go down. So I don't know what that means. But I'm finally getting around to watching the episode today, and we've got some comments to dive into before we start. I woke up this morning and I was like, oh, I think I'm ready for the Apothecary Diaries. I told the moderators, I was like, I want to start the day out well, and I'm always excited for the Apothecary Diaries. So I like starting out the day with something that I'm really excited to watch, and then it just like sets the mood for the rest of the day, which I'm super excited about. So yeah, we got a couple comments from episode 9. And then episode 10 that I want to go through. So Amelia Jungclaws for episode 9 says, your comment about how it was strangely fitting that the child born of love ended up living while the one born of hate or spite died made me think of something. Maybe part of the reason that Anshi believed that she, specifically, had cursed the late emperor and caused his death was because of Jinshi and how similar he looks to his supposed father. If Anshi believes that Jinshi is her kid, she would also believe that he's the product of the night that she assaulted the late emperor. How fitting it is, how karmic it would be for that child to look so like the late emperor. She wanted to make sure that he never forgot her, but then she gave birth to a child that would cause her to remember him every time she looked at him. Oh, the irony. I do like a lot of people have commented about how now it makes sense why Anshi wouldn't question Jinshi being hers, because he looks like his grandfather. So it's like, yeah, you kind of, I mean, I get why she would think that. And that comment definitely ties everything together in terms of that. Now, she may or may not believe that Jinshi is actually her child or knows that he's her grandchild. We don't know that. We can't make conjecture. And we don't know exactly from Aduo either because she's no longer here. Like, it's so convenient. The narrator, the mangaka and creator of this series, not the mangaka because that's a different person than the light novel author. The light novel author is very smart in season 1 and having Aduo go away before revealing all of this because we can't go and MaoMao can't go ask Aduo. She's not in the rear palace anymore. So I see you, author. I see what you're doing. That was really smart. So yeah, I thought that was really good. 3 a.m. Owl said, I wonder if there is not some aspect of relief for Anshi now that Jinshi has found MaoMao. We have no evidence of him ever having any previous relationships or showing any type of interest or attraction to anyone, so knowing he likes someone with their ages not only differing by a year or two could certainly put any potential worries of him being alike to the former emperor in more than just appearance to rest. I really liked that comment because, yeah, I feel like Anshi is definitely encouraging Jinshi with MaoMao because she's like, oh, good, you like someone your own age. Thank God, right? Although I will say to that, and I said this in my reply, I don't think Jinshi's had any prior relationships, mainly because ever since, he's 19 now, but how long has he been pretending to be Jinshi? So, I mean, since he was old enough to probably even have those relationships, he's been imitating a eunuch that cannot have relationships. So he literally has put himself into a position where he's not been able to date anybody or have that experience by what he's doing. So yeah, I mean, you have MaoMao who doesn't want that relationship. She's not interested. But then Jinshi literally, even if he was interested, can't do it. So it's like, it kind of works out in a very interesting way. So Algumalgum, thank you Algumalgum, because I've been like, I don't want to know too much about things happening in the light novel in case if they come up in later episodes. But Algumalgum did say that the author of the series tweeted extra information that is apparently not in the light novel. Now, going into this, is there a possibility they might animate it? I mean, There could be, but I'm assuming since the author was tweeting this out before that happens, it's probably not going to be in the series, and it's just extra context that they just felt like we needed to know with the episode. Because yeah, episode 9's some pretty serious subject matter. You're giving layers to a character that's a child predator. You need some context with that, to go further with it. And that's kind of what the author has done. So I'm going to read this and talk through Amalgam. There was also another commenter that posted the same thing. So thank you both on YouTube for posting this. But Amalgam says, after this episode aired, the author tweeted that the reason, or a reason, it can be translated as both, that the Empress was so overprotective and controlling over her son was because she couldn't always protect him from other high-ranking concubines. Basically, she's a helicopter parent. Also reminds me of Shishi, the former Chinese empress, without saying that. In the previous episode, Anshi's lady-in-waiting told us the previous empress was originally a court lady who became a low-ranked concubine. So she was rather low in the social power hierarchy. The fandom, now again, this is the fandom. Anytime the fandom starts generating ideas, I'm like, but it's not canon if the fandom thinks it up. It's only canon if the author says it. That's my view on it. I mean, there is Death of the Author where something that the author presents can be taken by the fandom and explored in their own way, and you have the right to. I don't personally hold a lot of water to fan theories until they are proven by the series. Right? Conjecture. But it says the fandom has generally interpreted the tweet as the higher-ranking concubines could have sexually assaulted the previous emperor as a child, which would explain his extreme aversion to grown women, this before maybe even getting the throne. It's also consistent with the opening where the emperor is being scared of the mature and blooming flowers. We know that the kind of attention Jinshi... we're going to talk about Jinshi in a second, but do I think that there is a high chance that he was sexually assaulted by the other concubines? He could have been. Here's my thing, though. The Empress protecting him, I kind of took it, and I didn't really want to talk about it in the last couple reactions because it's kind of like, ugh. I thought that maybe the original Empress might have came on to him and kind of maybe not sexually assaulted him, but came on to him in a really uncomfortable, predatory way because she's so controlling over him. And, and the reason I say that is because Shishi in the novel, in Sun Yao Ting, the last eunuch of China, she kind of did that with her kids, her sons. She kind of I'm not saying she sexually assaulted them, but she kind of came onto them in a way that was controlling and manipulative, but maybe a little sexual. And so I was interpreting that she was that way towards him. And that's why he was so averted towards, older women, because they reminded him of his mom, and his mom's the only one that has control over him, and he doesn't need two of those. So that was kind of my interpretation. Now, my only thing is, if those concubines sexually assaulted the Empress's son and the Empress's mom, and the Empress is a helicopter mom, you think them concubines are still alive? I don't. I think the concubines went found a hard way to fall real quick. If this woman's controlling and her son is everything, I think she would have Kathy Bates'd a lot of them concubines, and they would have been gone misery style. So I don't know about that. I don't know. If that's your interpretation, again, no interpretation is necessarily wrong. I can see that. To me, I just think if the other concubines had sexually assaulted the child emperor, I don't think they'd have been alive to tell the tale. I think she would have got rid of them pretty quick. So I don't know. Who knows? But anyway, to go on with that, we know the kind of attention that Jinshi gets. So if his grandfather looked similar, he would also be a target, especially for the women cramped in the smaller rear palace. This put the former empress in a better but still bad light for me, because she tried to provide a much needed protection, but still became a very toxic helicopter parent. One of the most tragic things, I think, is if she had put more effort in building up the former emperor into a more adjusted individual instead of protecting and infantizing him, then there's a good chance he wouldn't have grown up to be a predator and avoided a whole lot of abuse. I do agree with that. Now, I don't view the Empress very favorably because for my line of work, where I do academic advising at the college level, I have a lot of moms come in that are helicopter, and we call them bulldozer moms, where they just bulldoze everything and they don't let their child fail. And it's really toxic and not good and conducive for their growth, because then they come in with their sons who are 18 and 19 years old, like Jinshi's age, and they're just doing everything for them. And these boys look like they've never done a thing for themselves in their life. And I'm like, oh, you will not be able to function as an adult because mommy does everything for you. yikes. And they're very much, they just can't let their kid get out of the nest. And they've not taught their kid to be self-sufficient. And it's so detrimental. And I just see it and I'm like, So I see it a lot, actually. A lot. Like 30% of male students that I encounter, probably 30%, have mommy come with them to help them get registered for class. And I'm like, you're 19. Like, they should be able to learn some self-sufficiency. It's okay. But anyway, that's off my soapbox. I still think she's really a lot of the cause of this. However, as we've talked about last episode, I love how complicated this show makes things, because even if she was doing things out of love, it had a very toxic negative effect. And even if the emperor has a mental disorder or is toxically affected by his mother's actions, he still preyed on young girls, and that's wrong. So I do like that the show is not just making these characters one note and one dimensional. It is giving a context, and it's letting things flesh out in a very organic way and saying, like, you know what, there's not just one cause of something. There's a lot of other people implicated. And I really liked Algamalgam talked about it in their comment as well, that we also have to think about the parents of the young girls, like Li Shu's parents and Anshi's parents. They were totally fine with their children, their child daughters, getting assaulted and raped and potentially impregnated by this older man for power and status. And that's gross. And you know why they were doing it, but it's still gross. No thanks. So yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up. So now that we've done those comments, let's go to episode 10 for some more lighthearted comments before we start this episode. Marshmeo for episode 10 says, Alpha MaoMao building a nest to entice Omega Peacock Jinshi is a scenario I wasn't ready to imagine, but now I am. But Alpha Gaoshun? Sadly, the author probably would have had made him a beleaguered beta, beating away the alphas. I really love the idea of Gaoshun as a beta, just getting all the alphas away, like, leave Jinshi alone. I love it. I need the fan fiction. I need it right now. Anybody that has it, please feel free to share in the Discord. Although there's probably going to be spoilers in it. So, the tragedy of being a content creator that loves reading fan fiction and having to wait until the series is freaking over before you can read anything. And this series is going to go on forever because the light novels go on forever. So I'm like, ugh. And then finally, though, there are two things that Anime Annie pointed out that I felt we all need to know. First, in episode 10, I think the reason for Yinghua inviting MaoMao is because she knows MaoMao is likely to be completely unfazed by these scary stories. She loves the horror, but needs a stable presence she can rely on for when she gets too scared. That's really sweet and adorable, and I like that a lot better than me trying to think that it was a team building exercise, because it ended up not being. So I love the idea that Yinghua is like, hey, MaoMao, you'll be my anchor when I get scared. Like, that's friendship. That is friendship when you have that one friend that you know you can watch a horror movie with and grab onto when the popcorn goes flying and there's a jump scare. Like, everybody needs that one friend. So I think that's super cute that Yinghua was thinking of MaoMao in that way. Love it. And then the other thing, though, was I asked last week about Suirei, and, you know, we have this theory that the woman that organized the scary story, she's the one the emperor impregnated, and she had the daughter, and the daughter was booted out because she wasn't a kid, and the empress was like, nope, no heir. So the question is, you know, what about Suirei? Could Suirei be the daughter? Because it said that the woman's daughter was adopted by a doctor. Anime Annie pointed out in episode 20 of season 1, went back and checked because I couldn't think of what episode it was. The episode that gives us a glimpse of when Suirei entered the imperial palace. Jinshi reflects on what little they know about Suirei. According to the doctor, the one that didn't carry out an autopsy on Suirei's corpse, she was backed by his teacher, who a few years before brought her in as his adopted daughter. Now, the doctor's teacher would also be a doctor, and a few years before, nothing is confirmed, like, was brought as adopted daughter. But there's a lot of things. There's just so much. It's so open, right? It's so open. We don't know if doctors transferred Suirei from one to the next as she learned along the way, Moriarty style, as we would imagine. We don't know. But I'm going to maintain my theory that Suirei is Jinshi's, like, aunt, essentially. She'd be the emperor's half-sister. I don't know, y'all. I don't know. If we see some thick eyebrows on that old empress, we will know. there's a chance. But maybe not. Maybe Sui Rei is not related to the Emperor. Where's Mori? Where's the paternity tests? So anyway, I'm super excited to get into this episode. I hope you all are as well. I honestly have no clue what we're going to be getting from this episode. Now that we've had this like kind of, the ghost story episode was sort of like a palate cleanser, but really we're on episode 11, and usually we know this is like a continuous core. We're going straight from one to the next. Usually a core is 12 episodes. So this episode and the next episode would be like the halfway point of the season and would be like finishing one arc and getting ready to start another one. I don't know what that means. I don't know what that could entail, but I think it's going to be a two-parter episode. I think this episode and episode 12 are going to be a two-parter to finish out the core, and then episode 13 is going to start a new jaunt, a new arc, because that's what season 1 did. So I'm just basing it off of that. And kind of like what most modern anime are doing when you have continuous cores, 12 episodes, you finish an arc, you start a new one in episode 13. Usually that doesn't always follow that rule, but we'll see. So I've talked enough, but I hope you all are excited as I am. Thank you all so much for your comments and kind words and for watching with me. But we're going to start episode 11 of season 2 of Apothecary Diaries. And we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1. And let's go. Oh my God, why? Why the cliffhanger? Why? How could you? How could you? Right when we were getting down to business. Well, it'll be business time next week, I guess. I'm so glad because I am getting ready in a couple weeks to go to the national tournament with the team I coach, and we actually leave like next Saturday, not this coming Saturday, but the following Saturday. So I was really worried because I'm going to probably miss like episode 13 of Apothecary Diaries. We'll probably have to wait till I get back, and I'll talk about that in the April update video. So watch that coming out next week. But I'm so glad I'll at least be able to see episode 12 before I go. Least, although I don't know if it will end up being a 3-parter. If this episode set up so much and we still have for them to get out of the cave to figure out who the assailants are they with Lolan's dad or not? Who are they with? What's the deal? I don't know if we can solve all of that and have Jinshi explain who he is finally to MaoMao in one episode. So it may end up being a 3-parter, and episode 13 might end up being the end of the core. For all we know. We'll just have to wait and see. We'll just have to wait and see where that goes. But I brought Whiteboard Kun out because I was like, well, maybe we'll need to talk about some things with Whiteboard Kun. I don't know if that will be true or not. We'll just wait and see here in a second, but oh, that episode was amazing. That may be my favorite episode of the season so far. Not the series. I do like the lock-in episodes with Fang Shen they're still my top priority right now. But this is right there up there with them. This is in the top 5 for sure. Damn. I'm with Basin. I was like, you don't know? She doesn't know? Basin at this point is just like, she is in denial. And I'm like, yeah, she's been throwing a lot of things off to the side because, you know, why not? But yeah, oh my God, I'm finally glad that we're here. I'm so glad that we're here. So the episode starts out with Jinshi in a very conflicting position, right? Because we have Jinshi as technically right now, he is the heir to the throne. He is, for all intents and purposes, the heir until the emperor can have a son. That's really it is. And it's not the fact that he is Papa Bro's actual son, because I believe that he is. But even if he wasn't, if the emperor can't produce an heir and he dies, it goes to Jinshi. Like, Jinshi is the heir unless there's another son that can take it over. So I don't think that Jinshi wants to be emperor. I don't think Jinshi, has that desire, but it is weighing on his mind the possibility that it could happen. And he's been told by his dad and his grandmother, essentially, and got his actual mom's approval because she seemed like she was chill with MaoMao. So he has this concept that, MaoMao could, in fact, she could be his wife. Now, I personally think that MaoMao has a long way to go before she would even entertain such notions, right? Jinshi's such a romantic that Jinshi would be like on one knee with the ring ready to propose tomorrow if you told him that that was fine. And if she was on board with it, he'd be doing it in a heartbeat. MaoMao is the tough shell to crack in that regard because she, one, is pretty asexual. She's like, not to our knowledge thinking of that. She might be demisexual towards Jinshi. We just have to work that way towards it. I'm all on board with that. But she also is not very traditional in the sense of how she views relationships. She grew up in a brothel where the concept of marriage is literally an act of transaction and purchase. And MaoMao is such an independent person, and she's kind of against that notion of that system, that she has a very skewed view of love, which is very tragic in a way, that MaoMao, from growing up in the brothel, she views love as a transaction or as something political, because that's what she's been raised to view it as, and that it is a purchase. And because she has this kind of demisexual nature to her, she doesn't really have any natural attraction towards people, except for Jinshi. She's just in very big denial about it. But she doesn't view, she doesn't have a natural attraction to people like others do, which is very relatable to me. I get where she's coming from. But because of that, marriage is just kind of like, okay, And I totally get that with MaoMao. And do I think that MaoMao would be okay being with Jinshi down the road? Absolutely. But girl's going to take a while. This is going to be a slow burn. You can't just throw MaoMao. If you know anything from a cat, you can't just shove something in front of a cat and expect it to just take to it. That's not how that works. You've got to literally baby deer, hold the food out and let them come to you and go that way. So I don't know. But yeah, Jinshi's first, thoughts of the morning are the fact that MaoMao has been suggested that she could be, someone that could be his wife. And we know now, because of Lolan's standing in all of this, that she very well could. She's high enough in the ladder, the social ladder, that it would not be unheard of for her to be his wife. And it's like, ugh. But then there's also the idea that Jinshi, the emperors, are expected to have multiple wives to increase the chance of them having an heir. That brings out even more complications, because Jinshi seems like the type of person that he only has one lover in mind, which, we all assume will be MaoMao. But then along with that is the idea that MaoMao does not want to be a mom. She doesn't seem like she has that maternal instinct or desires it. And I kind of love that we have two characters that are kind of going against the grain with what relationships are expected to be in that series. I like they go against the grain, but it makes it very hard for them in the series to justify their relationship to society. So we'll have to see where that goes. I mean, I personally would like them to have the Donmai ending, where they just both say, peace out, Gao Shun, you can retire in earnest, and we're going to go off into the woods and become an apothecary duo and just supply medicines to the town, and y'all go on. So I'm really fingers crossing, hoping that Li Hua or Gyokyo's kids are boys. One of them needs to be a boy so that we can free Jinshi of his obligation, right? But we'll just see where that goes. So tomorrow they've been assigned, everything's in place, and all that's left is the girl. And Gao Shun's like, if you're going to have her along on this expedition, you're going to have to tell her. It's not going to be possible to hide it from her anymore. I don't know. I think she was going to be okay with being hidden from information until the assassins showed up. And she's like, I'm going to tell the apothecary the truth myself during the expedition about my true status. And Gao Shun's like, sure you are. Okay. I also like the concept. My headcanon is that Jinshi can't call her by her actual name because he will literally get a boner. He literally is so attracted to her that if he calls her by her name, he will get aroused because he's that much of a romantic. And he's had to repress himself so much that the tiniest gestures towards her are going to cause a scene. So he calls her apothecary to create that barrier where he doesn't have to call her that name. That's my thought anyway. So they've been invited. We're going to put invited to a traditional hunt, which doesn't seem like it happens every year because they talked about how none of them have been back to Lolan's dad's clan's place in 6 years. So it's the first time in 6 years that this has happened. Timing with Lolan coming to the palace? Why, how coincidental. But the hunt is happening at a Shishu, which I'm sorry, but Shisui, Shiso, not helping my theories at all, which is Lolan's dad, and their estate. Now, the obvious threat is that, here's the thing, the emperor was invited, but he didn't come. He did not come. Instead, it's Jinshi and some higher ranks to go here. You know what I got in this entire episode? I got Berserk vibes. I got Golden Age Berserk vibes throughout the cave scene, throughout the hunt scene. I was like having Berserk flashbacks all over the place, and not in a bad way, because the Golden Age arc of Berserk is amazing. And I was just like, it all comes back. It was like Celine Dion playing in the background. I was like, all right, cool. I'm all into this. But yeah, anytime a character goes on a hunt, I get suspicious, and I don't think there's good vibes. I feel like something bad's gonna happen. But yeah, we already know that the food was being poisoned. We know that Jinshi was being taunted at. Now we're gonna get to the scene where Lolan's dad said something to him. I have some ideas of what he could have said to him, but we'll get there. The food was poisoned, Jinshi was taunted, and there were assassins hired to kill Jinshi. The thing about it is Jinshi wears the face mask the entire time, which seems like something done for propriety, where because he's the emperor's brother, he's not allowed to be seen by the common folk, so he has to wear this veil, which I get. It's just that if you're trying to avoid an assassination attempt, being the only one with the veil makes you stand out. Even if they can't see your face, they know who you are. So it's like, okay. So that was a thing. My dogs, of course, probably sell something outside. But I thought the author was really clever with how Jinshi's whole, it felt like a Who's on First SNL skit of Jinshi not being able to tell MaoMao who he is. And he wasn't even able to tell her in this episode, which is so frustrating. But I want to talk about this scene where Guoko has Jinshi request to have the apothecary back for the hunt. I like that they show us how much time has passed. Guoko is suddenly showing, very much showing. This is the most obvious she has looked pregnant in this entire series so far. She is most definitely pregnant. And I don't know if it's been a month or two has passed or a couple weeks, and suddenly it was sometimes pregnant women don't look pregnant for a long time, and then within a week's time it's boom, baby, and it's oh, there it is. So sometimes women just in a matter of a week or two suddenly show much more than they did. So we'll see. Oh my gosh, you guys. Somebody's probably delivering mail or something. So yeah, so Jinshi is oh, I just want to request. I think MaoMao gets so frustrated at Jinshi because he's very fake when he gives a smile, oh, hey, apothecary, how you doing? I think she just kind of gets grumbly with him because she's I know this isn't how you normally are. I like you better when you're childish and a little bit immature and you're not putting on a facade. I can see you're putting on a facade and I don't care for it. I think she likes him when he's being genuine with her, but when he puts on the handsome eunuch mask, she's just okay, what do you want? And of course he likes it when she's grumbly, so it's just they enable each other, essentially. But he's I just want you to return this one to me for a few days. Now, Guoko, I love Gyoko's innocent face when he says return this one. That face, the animators knew exactly what they were doing. She's this one? Who are you wanting? There's multiple women in the room. Are you wanting her or her? And she's why don't you say? It felt like in Drag Race where the drag queens are saying who they're talking about and they won't be specific because they don't want to say the name. And the other drag queens are say her name, say her name. And I was I wanted Jinshi. Gyoko's say her name if you want to borrow her. I was oh! And also Jinshi is trying his hardest to be as impersonal as possible because as his grandmother told him a few episodes ago is that if you love MaoMao, you need to protect her. You need to protect her and keep your affection hidden. Now, Jinshi's not doing a very good job of that, but by the end of this episode. But I get where she's coming from, because Anshi is like, look, if you love this woman, she is not a noble. Her dad is the best strategist in the kingdom, and he has a lot of power behind him, and he has a powerful family behind him, even if they've kind of like half disowned him. Anshi's like, MaoMao is not a servant girl. She's got some backing with her family, but she ain't no noble or princess. She's not a concubine or a consort. So she's kind of riding this like middle line where she's got some backing, but not enough to keep her completely safe from harm. So Anshi's like, if you don't want her to be a target, you need to not make her a target. And I like that Anshi basically says, if you love her, not let her go, because that's not what she's saying. But if you love her, you need to be careful what you do. And so in this scene with Guoko, Jinshi is trying to do that and trying to be like, I just need to borrow the apothecary. No big deal. Everything's fine. But here's the problem. Guoko knows that he loves her. She's got eyes. She's been around them enough. She's been teasing him. So at this point, it's a little too late for Guoko. She already knows that he loves her, and it's already too late. And she's like, what are you talking about? And I love that Guoko she needles him. And she's like, I'm a pregnant woman that can do whatever she wants. And so she just teases him so much. I find it interesting that Suiren is going to be the taste tester while MaoMao's gone. I mean, of course she's trustworthy. I also like Gaoshun with the fanning Jinshi. I thought that was really cute. I liked that him and Hong Niang, they're besties. And I feel bad for Hong Niang because she's probably like, damn, if only you weren't married successfully. So yeah, I just love that she's like, oh, you want to borrow my MaoMao. I love that Gyoko's like, I love Guoko and Li Hua are so protective of MaoMao because they love her so much. I mean, it's so funny to me because Guoko is essentially Jinshi's mother-in-law. Essentially. And even if Jinshi doesn't know that that's his mother-in-law, he thinks it's his sister-in-law. So she's an in-law either way, and she just teases him like an in-law, and it's really cute. I love it. And Jinshi's just like, I love the whole time Hong Niang and Gaoshun are looking at each other like, why is this happening? And she's like, which girl? You keep saying that girl. Say her name. And Gaoshun's like, I hate my life. Gaoshun this whole episode was like, I hate it here. I wish they'd just talk. Why can't we be straightforward? And MaoMao's like, he never has called me by name before. I mean, I get why not. And the whole time Jinshi's looking around like, I don't want to get erection in front of these people. I don't want to say her name, get an erection in front of these people and throw my entire cover that I've built for years. And just by saying her name, MaoMao's like, why is he uncomfortable? And Hong Niang's like, And I love the fact that it took 30 minutes to get Gyoko's permission. For a half hour, she just needled him and teased him and was like, I'm not going to see you for several days, so I'm getting in my laughs now. So we get a little bit of a history lesson here. We get a little bit of a lesson on this and find out that the character used to write their nation, this fictional nation's name, is Li. Which, dang! Ling Li has a very royal name then, if part of Ling Li's name is literally the kingdom's name. I mean, girl setting up. I wish Ling Li could become the empress. I wish we could get rid of this patriarchal structure, make Ling Li the empress, let her rule, long may she reign, make this a matriarchy. Why not? It would go with the royal mother business. Come on, show. But they're not going to do that. Because why would we do that? Why would we do something interesting? Anyway, so the idea is 3 swords under grass. So I liked the fact that the grass, and this is a bad drawing, but the grass represents the royal mother. And then there are 3 swords that are protecting it. I thought a couple of things with this. Obviously, the number 3 has a lot of, if you do numerology or you do any type of symbolism, the number 3 is like kind of a divine number. So that makes sense. I also thought it was interesting in how there are 4 main concubines. One is the primary empress usually, and the other 3 are the concubines that support them. So to me, that kind of showed like if the emperor picks, like, let's say Guoko as his empress, then Li Hua, Li Shu, and Lolan would be the three other concubines that would kind of serve along with that would round it out as 4, because 4 is a big number in numerology as well. But I thought, here's the thing. We have 3 swords under grass. So the grass is the flower that represents the mother royal, the ancestor. And then it said that the 3 swords represent 3 warriors who helped her. And so we have one with his back turned, one with the sword, and one that looks kind of like Jinshi that's off to the side. So I wondered if we had 3 warriors, let's just have fun and say MaoMao is the representation of the grass, because she's our main character, so we can say that. So who would be the 3 swords that help her? Well, Jinshi would be one, obviously. I would say Li Haku would be one. Li Haku, our sweet golden retriever, he would help MaoMao. He has helped MaoMao in the past, sure. So that would leave the 3rd sword of who would help her. And I don't want to say Gaoshun, because I think Gaoshun and Locken are like the older individuals, but I would put Basin under there for now. Basin, or would we say Shisui? I guess we could, technically, in a sense. But I won't want to put Gaoshun or Locken because they're older, but I would say maybe Basin, Li Haku, and Jinshi are the 3 swords that help her. Maybe. Who knows? We'll see. I think that's interesting. And of the 3 swords, one larger sword represents the northern lands. Okay, so on their flag, though, the largest sword is the one that represents Lolan's land. I find it interesting that Lolan was, I guess, because they only wanted 4 concubines. I guess we didn't want to get too crazy. We just needed a concubine to represent each sector, right? We don't want to get too wild. But I find it interesting that Lolan only now came to the royal palace, I guess because she was just of age. And they knew that the current emperor was not like the former emperor and would not have stood for. That would be really interesting if we found out that Lolan had originally, because let's say Lolan's 18 or 19. Let's say Lolan is 20. Let's say Lolan's 20. Let's just go with that. Let's go with the off chance that Lolan is 20. I'm just rounding out. So let's imagine that if Lolan is 20, 6 years ago when the current emperor died, she would have been 14. Let's backtrack a little bit. Let's say she's 18 now. She would have been 12. So I wonder if back in the day, Lolan, her father was planning when she was 12 years old to bring her to the rear palace as one of the concubines, kind of like Li Shu, to court the previous emperor. And then right around that time, because if we recall, Lolan's dad was in kind of with the old empress, the OG empress. She was kind of in with them. And she knew them and knew the Dowager Empress. So let's say that was going on around that time. But then, right as Lolan is 12 years old, the previous emperor dies. And the current emperor becomes the emperor. Well, guess what? The current emperor does not like young girls. But he likes Aduo. They're like besties. So he makes Aduo the empress because she also has the baby with him before they die. And so that takes that seat away. And then Lolan's dad realizes the current emperor is not going to be wooed at all by a 12-year-old girl. Good for him. So what if Lolan's dad then waited, training Lolan up to be ready to ascend and take the place in as one of the concubines, one of the consorts, whenever there's an opening. And then right as Aduo is sent away, there's the opening, and that's when Lolan sweeps in. Now she's 18 years old. She's technically old enough. Comes on in. But unbeknownst to Lolan's dad, Lolan's kind of a weirdo because she's also Shisui. And is just, and maybe they've planned out other things. Maybe there's a whole conspiracy and they've had 6 years to plan out swooping in. The thing of it is I definitely think that Lolan's dad is conspiring against, obviously with this assassination attempt on Jinshi, I think they're conspiring. And the question is, what else are they going to do? I think they want to swoop in and have Lolan become the empress And I think there's a part of Lolan, if Lolan is Shisui, because Shisui loves Anshi. Shisui thinks that Anshi is the greatest thing since sliced bread, that she's done so much to stop the eunuchs being in the palace, to stop the slaves being in the palace. She holds Anshi up to such a high standard. And if we go with the theory that Lolan and Shisui are the same person, I could see Lolan wanting to become the empress because she's like, I can carry on Anshi's work. But it's interesting to me because if that is the case, I don't know if Lolan's doing a very good job of wooing the emperor. It doesn't seem like she is because she's more confusing him and kind of throwing him off than anything. And he's like, I'm just here for big tits, ma'am. And so he's like, I'm not here for all of your British theater performances. And she's like, oh, man. So I don't know. I'm kind of torn in this weird place where a part of me thinks Lolan would like to become the Dowager Empress and be with the emperor and help carry on Anshi's work. But then another part of me thinks that her family's trying to conspire and kill the emperor and do something with that, whatever that may be. And then another part of me is like, Lolan actually doesn't want to be empress at all. She just kind of admires Anshi and she's just there because her dad is making her there and all this other stuff is going on. So there's not enough puzzle pieces that the show has given us to totally fit everything together. But next week, if we find out who these assassins are and if they're related to Lolan's dad and how that all works out, then that could give us some more information. So we'll just have to wait and see about that. Right? So anyway, I'm going to take this coat off. It is getting warm in here. But I feel like MaoMao and Jinshi. It's getting hot in here. So in the words of Nelly. So yeah. So the entire area grows sorghum and wheat, which is interesting. Again, if we're going to go with the Lolan and Shisui theory, there's probably a lot of bugs in that area because lots of crops attract lots of bugs. So maybe Shisui, if she's from that area, would have grown up knowing how to capture said bugs or what they all represent. I don't know. Who knows? So if you go further north, you get into a mountainous area. I love Basin is trying to give MaoMao, Boston is trying to give MaoMao a history lesson. And MaoMao's like, is this involving alcohol or poison? Then I'm not listening. She's just like, I love her little buns. They're super cute. And Boston's like, I'm trying to explain the place we're going to. Boston is way too serious. He is way too serious. Part of Gao Shun's charm and Gao Shun's sexiness to me is how chill and mature he is. Although, when we had the flashback of Jinshi as a little kid and Gao Shun was like, come on, you can like the toy, it was giving a little bit of Boston vibes. So I kind of get that maybe Boston's just, he's 19 years old. He's a kid. He just needs to mature a little bit like Gao Shun. But he's so uptight. I love it. And she's like, oh yeah, the northern Shihokushu, yeah. Controlled by Shisho's clan, the one who invited on the hunt. Yeah, he seems real trustworthy. And she's like, the hunt is an excuse to bring him to his own turf. Yeah, seems like a political problem. He couldn't get the emperor to come, but that's quite a roster to go. And I love that Boston's like, why does my father care so much about this girl? I love Boston. He trash talks MaoMao. Don't you trash talk MaoMao, Boston. Gao Shun's in the right. She is very important. Gao Shun cares a lot about MaoMao because MaoMao is literally the only woman that Jinshi's going to be with. That's literally why. And she's like, oh yeah, Boston is Master Gao Shun's son, apparently. I love it. Gao Shun was invited on the trip as a guest in his own right. I kind of love that Boston he must look like the mom a lot. Boston will serve as Jinshi's aide instead. She's like, eunuchs aren't born that way, so it's not strange for him to have a son given his age. I mean, I definitely think MaoMao could justify Gao Shun being older when he was castrated and became a eunuch and had already had Boston by that point because her own dad, Loman, was castrated at a later age as well. So, I mean, it's to her, in her mind, that part's not unheard of. I also love that her little buns kind of look like cat ears. That's really super cute. I love it. So this place is gorgeous. The Shisho clan, also the black and red motif. I will say the black roofs probably insulate and gather a lot of heat because black conducts heat very well. So the fact they're so hot inside the building, I'm not surprised because like a black roofing and a very sunshiny place, it would get very warm very quickly. So interestingly enough, apparently the late emperor used to go here all the time. and members of the imperial family haven't visited during the current emperor's reign. So in the last 6 years, nobody's visited up here, which would that have insulted Lolan's dad? Probably a little bit. But I don't know. We don't know for sure. But knowing that the late emperor came here a lot is interesting. Very interesting. But the Shishu's clan manages to keep a hold of the area. Interesting indeed. She's like, we're staying in a pretty fancy place. Very top notch. And of course, all the markers are there, right? Why would Jinshi be invited to a hunt as just a eunuch that is the emperor's top eunuch? Why would we be staying in the Ritz? Why would there need to be an aide? Why, when Boston talks about the family serving Jinshi's family, I guess MaoMao concludes that Jinshi's family was well off before he became a eunuch. But girl, she is all but just in denial in this episode. She's just like, yeah, that's why it happens. That's why that's that. I'm like, let's be real. Now, Jinshi is really hot there and like sweating it out. But I wondered if he wasn't able to bring the drug that he drank with him, if he was having withdrawals from drinking. Because here's the thing, the drug that him and Gaoshun have drank, it's still a drug. So if you stop drinking it, I mean, there's a chance you could get an erection, which by the end of this episode, I think that's what happens. But we'll see next episode if that's true or not. But I feel like if he's going through withdrawals, then he could be like facing that, plus the fact of the anxiety of being in this place where his life is in danger, plus the fact that he thinks he's going to tell MaoMao about all this and reveal the truth that he's really not wanted to talk about the last how many years now? And so there's a lot of pressure on Jinshi at this point, and it all kind of builds up in this episode. And then this show is a bastard and makes us wait till next week. So how dare you? How dare you, show? But she's like, yeah, this room is strangely warm. I also like that she's just posed there like a damn model in front of MaoMao. MaoMao's like, really? Really, you're doing this to me? He's more tired than usual, but there has to be limits. I love that she's like, quit looking sexy, please, sir. So she's like, is that a face mask? Does he need to hide his beauty whenever he leaves the room? Girl! I love that it's so infuriating to us, the audience, because we know MaoMao is talking about how attractive she is and how much she loves him, but she's so dry and nonchalant about it, and she doesn't even realize she's doing it. I'm like, oh my God, girl. Oh my God, girl. So then Boston's like, what should we call you? And he's like, well, indoors you can use the usual name, meaning that Jinshi is not his actual name, but outside call me Kosen. What does Kosen mean? What does Kosen mean? Kosen, to proclaim to the world, means higher, tall, or specialty or exclusive. To widely declare. Wow, what a name! It's like he's talking about telling MaoMao the truth about his actual birthright, and his code name is to widely declare. Like he's giving himself a pep talk to try and tell someone his actual identity. Also, this was really genius because it was a way to go about saying things without actually saying them, because he's like, okay, Master Kosen. So Boston tries to practice saying his name indoors. And she's like, why do you have to come up with a fake name? And he's like, oh, well, about that. And he can't say. And Gaoshun looks so sad. He's like, come on, just say it, right? And then she's like, well, Gaoshun was invited as a guest, right? So what's the deal? And Gaoshun's like, she's like, why are they in the same building? Like MaoMao is she's all but piecing it together. And Boston's like, are you kidding? And then he says, the Ma clan have served Master Kosen's family for many generations. Like what a clever way to go about it without saying we've served the emperor's family for generations. That's what he's saying. But because he's practicing the name, to MaoMao it comes across as Jinshi's family, not the emperor's family. And I'm like, oh. So we do find out that Gaoshun, which they're part of the Ma clan, have served the emperor and their family for years. Which explains why they're pretty well off and why Gaoshun's wife has a nice country home, and I envy her. So cool. And she's like, oh, Jinshi must have a very well-off family. And so she's like, that's interesting. And so Boston's like, why is she being so dense? And then Gaoshun leads her away and says, well, she doesn't know what's going on. And Boston's like, how? And I love it because we're all in the same boat as Boston. We're like, how does she not know? And Gaoshun's like, I know she's intentionally being dense, but Jinshi's going to tell her soon. Not in this episode, of course. And Boston's like, are you freaking kidding me? He's like, of all things. And Gaoshun's like, we're not going to make fun of her. She's going to be his future wife. Shut up. And MaoMao's like, okay, I don't have time for this. I'm going to go. Or Suiren will be mad at me. I do love the idea that they just have giant blocks of ice to help cool the room. That's really fun. That's interesting. And Boston's standing there the whole time like, when's he going to tell her? Boston's like, when is this going down? I'm sure, and Boston has his fist clenched. I'm sure by next episode, Boston's gonna like, I wouldn't be surprised if Boston went up to Jinshi like, why didn't you tell her sooner? Like, what is going on? Why are you keeping this hidden from her? Because Jinshi's just sitting there reading a book, has all the time in the world to tell her, but is choosing not to. And he's like, no, we just need to taste the food. And she's like, really? He's like, you'll understand when you taste the food that everybody's trying to poison me. So soft-shell turtle, about that, yeah. I mean, it's probably like crab meat. I don't know. I don't know if I could eat turtle. My great-grandfather used to like cook turtle. He'd make like turtle soup and stuff, which is very Midwestern hillbilly thing to do. But he did used to make, my dad said he made turtle soup one time and he was like, oh. But he ate it because he was dating my mother at the time and he was like, he wanted to make a good impression. So he did eat it. But he was like, it wasn't great. So I'd imagine it's kind of like crab meat, but I don't know. I see a lot of box turtles on the side of the road and it's one of those things when you see it like that, I don't know. Reptiles are weirder than cows. I could eat a cow even though I've seen one, but a turtle, I don't know. I can't eat crawfish because especially if they're boiled because you can see their eyes and everything. If I saw that turtle on the plate like it was and the shell was cracked open, I don't think I could do it. I think I'd be like Jinshi and be like, nah, I'm good. I think at least with a crab, you don't see its face anymore. So there's kind of like a little bit of a barrier there. And so Gaoshun's brought preserved food so that Jinshi can eat. But Jinshi's like, it's not anything I should eat here. Here's the thing. Does turtle an aphrodisiac? Is it? So in some cultures, there's belief that turtle eggs are aphrodisiacs, but there's no scientific basis to this claim. Are turtles an aphrodisiac? Some believe that the eggs are, but there's no scientific belief to this. I don't know. I didn't know if Jinshi didn't want to eat the food because they were trying to like give him food that would cause an erection or not, or it's like food like there's peaches on the table, so I don't know if it was all like kind of sexual in nature and there was something with that. I don't know, or if he's just like, if Jinshi is not eating because he believes that there's a chance it's tainted, or he doesn't want, maybe Jinshi is boycotting the food because he doesn't want to be there. I wasn't sure about that. I was really curious as to what the deal behind that was, but she's like, well then can I eat it? And she's like, okay. And so then they give it to Boston and she's like, well, it's your food. She's totally fine. And Boston's like, okay, I'll try it. But then he drinks the whole cup of liquor. And luckily it wasn't like any serious poison, but she's like, well, I can handle a large quantity and not get sick because that's just how I am. Boston cannot. Boston can't handle his liquor or his poisons. I'm glad Gaoshun wasn't worried about him. He thought, oh, it's fine. It's just a little nosebleed. He'll be okay. But anyway, the whole idea of the rooms and where everybody ends up is so thrown around. I'm like, girl, MaoMao can figure out any mystery within 10 seconds, but the one right in front of her that has to do with her and Jinshi, girl is actively in denial about. Because I mean, I would be like, if Gaoshun's like, here, you use this room, I'll use that room, we'll not be in the same rooms. Something's up. And MaoMao just kind of like, oh, well, how do you know? Girl. I do think she looks super cute in the little bath scene. She's like, it's very extravagant. And like all of the fancy bed, the liquor and the mirrors and everything. Girl, come on now. You have to know. She's like, so the hunt starts tomorrow. And then we see these people with, they call it the Feifa, but it's literally like a pistol. And so whoever they are, they're planning on killing and assassinating Jinshi and the others. Yep. So it's half an hour away by horseback. Yeah, conveniently away from everyone and the entire city. Interesting. And an hour up the mountain by foot. Yeah, seems like a long way away to cook the game caught by nobles on the spot. So yeah, they're like, if we catch anything, we're going to cook it right here and then. There also is a compound there, so that's good. They're not just out in the middle of the boonies with no compound to go to in case somebody gets hurt. There is a facility that probably has some bandages or something there for first aid. But they're all camped out around. I love that the eunuchs and the guards are making, like, I don't know if any eunuchs are there, but the soldiers and stuff are making hot pot. Super cute. So MaoMao's like, well, I have nothing to do here because I'm the only girl in this sausage fest. Nobody's making poisons. I got nothing to do. I always think of Alucard from Hellsing Ultimate, where it's like, I'm going to go take a walk. A very enthusiastic walk. And MaoMao decides to do the same. And look who she runs into. She's like, I want to find some herbs and mushrooms. But then she finds Lihaku. I think that dog is going to be the one to discover them in the cave. I think the callback when she whistled in the cave, I think the dog could hear it. I'm predicting the dog coming to find them. Lihaku's going to be the hero of our story because he's a little precious angel baby. I love it. I also like the politics in this scene. It's very brief and subtle, but I think MaoMao kind of gets along with Lihaku as well because he kind of is similar to her in that he's not from a wealthy, noble family necessarily. She talks about how he's from the countryside, but he's strong and reliable, and he's a good-natured person and trustworthy, and he's worked his way up the ladder. And some other people that are higher than him that are maybe a little bit more proud and from a noble family are probably jealous of that. So they send him out to like mess with a dog rather than get involved, which normally I feel like somebody would be angry about and being like, oh, I see how it is. But Lihaku takes it all in stride and he's like, it's fine. I'll just watch the dog. It's cool. Okay. I mean, good for him. Lihaku's a sweetheart. Also, I hope he rises up through the ranks so that he can buy out the princess and they can live happily ever after because he's a handsome cutie. Like, he's such a himbo, but he's adorable. And I love him and MaoMao's little platonic relationship. Also, I think Lihaku knows that Jinshi likes her, so he's like, you're over here. So, yeah. So, anyway, then we have the scene where they're all eating dinner. And it shows, like, a bunch of different guys with their guards behind them. Gaoshun is there. MaoMao's next to Gaoshun. It's very hot in the building. All of the ice in the basins have melted by now. So it's literally just the fans keeping them warm. Like, let's not open a window. And then Jinshi is not taking the mask off or eating the food because he does not feel trust there at all, which is interesting. I also wondered if he didn't want to take off the mask because I know that there's the propriety of it, but I wonder if people would recognize the former emperor if they saw him and connect the dots. Who knows? But everyone there is staring at him. All the girls, of course, have blushy faces because they think he's handsome, but all the men there are just staring with like almost contempt. And it's weird. And they're all like, look at him and how suspicious he seems. But he's the most important person at the party. I'm like, girl, because he's the emperor's brother's son. So of course he is the most important person at the party. And MaoMao seems in that moment a bit concerned for him. I feel like MaoMao's like, this is not a good position for him to be in. And she seems a little concerned. Then Shishu, Lolan's dad, he says something to Jinshi. He's the organizer of the hunt, but he says something to Jinshi. And Jinshi has a very visible reaction. Like he's shaking. He's so angry. And I like that MaoMao gets a little concerned, being like, what did he say to him? Like, what was going on? Like, I like that MaoMao, despite herself, does get concerned and worried for Jinshi. Hence her making, like, the electrolytes, the sugar water to help him get his energy back in the moment. Like, good for her. I'm glad that she's concerned for him. So what did Shishu say to Jinshi? What did he say? I think it could have been a couple things. I think it could be, maybe he's trying to pass Lolan on to Jinshi. If your brother's not interested in her, are you interested in her? Was he insulting the emperor? Was he insulting Jinshi or the emperor? I don't know if he would do it outright, but was it something like that? I wish we could have seen what he said. I want to know what he said. And they'll probably tell us in a future episode. So I'm like, So, or was he making a note about MaoMao? Was he like, oh, why'd you bring her along? What is she here for? Is she your concubine? I feel like the most likely thing is that he made a comment about MaoMao and Jinshi got frustrated by that because, again, as Anshi said, you've got to be careful, especially you went into enemy territory or potential enemy territory with the girl you love, and now she's on display. People are going to take note, and that could make her a target. So, the one thing is, I feel, and then Boston, of course, is like kind of shaken up about this too. And so I want to know what he said. But Gaoshin, of course, is like, no, let's not get involved. Don't do anything. And then Jinshi walks away. And so Gaoshin's like, okay, now you can go. Go find him, give him the water. And then Jinshi shows up. And she's like, well, go ahead and take this off and let me give you the water. And he's like, no, I'll be seen. And she's like, fine, I'll take you somewhere where you won't be seen. I love that she just grabs him and like, she's so much shorter than him, but she lets him drape himself over her. And then she goes and gets the wet wash rag for him. And she's like, here, let me wipe your face at least and give you some water. And that's when he's like, I need to tell you something. So I feel like whatever Shishu said to him has something to do with MaoMao. And he's like, I need to tell you now. But of course he doesn't get to tell her because of the assassination attempt. Why would he? My biggest fear is that when he does tell MaoMao, there's going to be this moment where he's like, I don't know if we can be together any longer or work together because it'll put you in danger. And that's like the last thing I want. But I also feel like maybe if Jinshi's honest with her, she'll be like, well, we can still work together, but like, I'm not in any place to be in that type of relationship right now. And he'll be like, okay. And maybe they can get to, because here's the thing, even though I think even though Jinshi obviously loves MaoMao, MaoMao's not at that point yet. She's just now even realizing she hasn't even realized that she likes Jinshi. She hasn't even realized she does like him. She just is not aware of it. So I feel like at least if they're open and tell each other this truth and MaoMao can stew on it, it will cause her to do some self-reflection, and maybe moving forward, she can think about how she feels about him and they can develop a relationship rather than just happening. I'm all for that, but it's like, I feel like it's going to create some hurdles, but also open up some opportunities for them to get closer inadvertently. He's like, I was going to tell you at some point, but I'm actually the Emperor's brother. So, of course, they get shoot. I love Jin. She's like, let's go. And he's like, this might be a bit startling. And she's like, a bit startling. But I guess MaoMao can't swim. So the assassins think that Jinshi's dead. There's no way they would survive that. But Jinshi's like, if you just land at the right time, you'll be fine. Cutting, show you are cruel. Show you are mean. Cutting to him with his mouth on hers, making it look like a kiss when it's CPR. That was mean. That was very mean of you. Now, the question is, do we count this as their first kiss? I don't count this as a first kiss because she's not conscious. Consent is important. Consent is necessary. So this is not a first kiss to me. He's literally just performing CPR. That would be like saying every character that's had CPR performed on them was a romantic kiss. No, it's not. No, it's not. So I don't think this is the first kiss necessarily. I could see some people taking it that way, but it has to be consensual and MaoMao has to be present for it. So no, thank you. No, it's just, but him saving her life by performing CPR is wild. I'm glad it works. Glad everything's fine. He also looks so tender in that moment when she first jumps up. He's like, he looks so innocent and sweet in that moment. Like he's just happy that she's okay. And he's like, oh, I'm sorry if you couldn't swim. And she's like, well, doesn't matter. I was going to get shot either. But I love that she's like, still, it was a 50-meter drop. Like you got to warn a girl about that. I love it. And she's like, I thought you were crazy. And he's like, well, no. He's like, I did some research. I love it. In that moment where he kind of looks away and you see like his eyelashes, he looks like a Bleach character, which is great. So then she takes off her robes, which her being as clinical as possible. She's like, I don't want to catch a cold, so I'm taking off these wet clothes. Sorry for the indecent display. I'm like, girl, you think that you don't look good, but you are sorely mistaken. Jinshi believes very much otherwise. The blush is inherent. The one thing I hate is when MaoMao's like, even though it's just a set of skinny ribs, I'd like to hide what I can. Girl, girl, don't talk down on yourself, right? Don't talk down on yourself. Like, Jinshi thinks you are beautiful. And she's like, oh, I'll wring yours out. And he's like, no, I can do it myself. And he's like, and I can wring yours out because I'm stronger. You know, I've got more strength. She's like, okay. I love she says, oh, he looks healthier than earlier. She saw his abs and was like, oh, okay, good. He's still handsome. He's still good. The six-pack hasn't diminished, so he's fine. Girl, I mean, I love he's sitting there just trying to wring it out like, son of a bitch. He's so flustered and frustrated at this point, and you just feel so bad for Jinshi. You're like, oh no. And she's like, well, I was going to give him these herbs, but that's no good. And he's like, what's the deal? And she's like, well, here are these little sticks. So it's a salty snack to help get you, you know, rehydrated, you know. I love, she looks so tiny compared to him in that moment. She looks so small. Because he's like, you know, not only is his height, whenever they have the robes off, the height and body difference is very apparent. Not that it's a bad thing, but it's very noticeable. And she's like, you know, you need to rehydrate. And I love when she like reaches up to check for his fever. I mean, and the thing about it is, in that moment, it's the most sexualized we've ever seen MaoMao from his point of view, how he views her. And the thing about it is, she thinks of herself as this little gangly stream being that's not attractive at all. And the way that he looks at her, you're like, oh, him and Lolan have a lot in common. They just don't want to admit it. And she's like, you know, you just need some salt just in case. And I love that he like goes to feed her one, and she's just like, let me have that. She's like, no. She's like, don't feed me. It's super cute. And of course he likes that. He's like, you know, he likes that she takes it away from him. That's what he likes. Super adorable. So they talk about someone, you know, using a gun to try to shoot at them. And MaoMao's like, why are these people after Jinshi? And I'm like, girl, I wish Jinshi had just told her then and now while they were sitting in the cave. I wish he would have told her then and now while they were sitting in the cave. I don't know why he didn't tell her while they were sitting in the cave. There was so much time in that moment to explain who he was at that moment, but he doesn't. I'm like, dude. So they find a way out of the cave, and they think that Gaoshan or one of them could come to help. And they're like, well, maybe if I sit on your shoulders, I can get up there and it'll work. And then she was so close, but the damn frog, the frog we saw earlier in the season, bounced on her head, distracts her, and then she slips and falls on him. Now, this last scene where he has his arms around her and she's literally in between him. And for a hot second, she's like, oh, excuse me. And he pulls her close to him in that moment. And then she kind of like stares at him, and the way he's staring back at her. Oh, I honestly think in that moment, I think he's gotten an erection and he pulls her back to show her, to be like, hey, I've not been able to tell you this whole time. Girl, I'm not a eunuch. And this is the proof. I feel like Jinshi's like, let my actions speak louder than my words in this moment because I haven't been able to tell you. So if you catch my drift. Oh, but we have to wait a week before we find out? That is torture. That is literal torture. Literal torture. Allegory of a cave, huh? Oh my God. Ugh. My biggest thing is, like, do the people, are the assassins working with Lolan's dad? If they are, do they not think, how in the world do they think that that's going to help any relations with the Emperor and Lolan? So what's the deal? Because if you kill Jinshi, like, are you planning a coup to kill the Emperor and take over by force? Is that what's happening? Is that the plan? Is that why Lolan has maybe been Shisui to gather all the intel and explore the palace and figure out all the nooks and crannies so she can report back to her dad and the envoys can work with him to stage a coup and take over? I don't know. But I can't believe I have to wait till next week to find out what's going on. It's so hard. Literally! Ah! Okay. I know it's gonna be hard to not spoil me. I don't blame you. I get it. But please no spoilers till next week. I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe. Take care so you can come back with me next week and we can see episode 12 of the Apothecary Diaries season 2. Bye!